Hi, I'm Brent Johnson, and with me again today is Jeff White. We have come not far from where we were at Historic Trinity Lutheran to Holy Cross Lutheran, and we are in the Cherokee neighborhood. This follows that video I did the other day on my bike where we started in Soulard and came down to Cherokee. Tell me a little bit about the history of this church. This has a connection to Historic Trinity.
Absolutely. So it is the daughter church of Trinity, and at the time when the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod was formed, they decided to start day schools, which was very important back, well, it's still important today. And Holy Cross was one of them. So in 1850, they started the school here at this site, which at the time would have been in the country, much as Trinity was when it was built. And 8 years later, in 1858, there was enough of interest to form a congregation. And so, as you can see, it's quite a spacious room. It holds a lot of people. So this church was actually built in 1864.
Okay.
Sorry, 1867, let me get it correct, somebody will know differently. It actually only went out to the corner where the transepts start.
Okay.
And then in 1876, they needed more space, so they expanded it down to what you see today.
Wonderful.
Unfortunately, in 1896, the great cyclone that hit Trinity also hit this building on its way to Trinity.
Yeah.
I don't think this church took as much damage as Trinity did. The steeple is definitely 35 feet shorter than it was,
wow.
and I don't know that the original organ would have been damaged by that. But it's significant to mention that C.F.W. Walther, who founded the Missouri Synod, as we talked about, was the first president, rather. He was also an organist.
Okay.
And so organ music was very important to him, and so he would have overseen the original organ that was in this room at the time and actually would have played it occasionally. Over time, in 1902, the church needed to replace the organ because the original was damaged, and so they, not damaged, but it wasn't working correctly.
Okay.
And so Kilgen was contracted to install what you see here, and it was stenciled at the time too, but in the 1950s they redecorated and painted over it.
Oh, no, we should say, just going back, the first organ that was in here would have been another J.G. Pfeffer instrument.
Exactly,
much like
exactly.
Historic Trinity had. Of course, Pfeffer was the guy building organs in St. Louis at the time.
That's
so,
very true,
all
very
right.
true.
So yeah, then Kilgen built this beautiful case and facade.
Right.
And it's still all here, but the organ's been altered a little bit.
It has been. So 1924, Kilgen did a major rebuild at the time, and I don't know much about the instrument prior to that, but the 1924 rebuild is largely what the instrument is today. In 1950, there was a little bit of a rebuilding, probably leathering and things like that, as it does. And as I said, they redecorated the building and painted over the facade stenciling. And then in 1987, there were some stops that were replaced after Martinot had done some work on the console, the original console that was here in 1981. He did a little bit of tonal finishing, but in 87, the great trumpet actually had collapsed on itself. So what they did is they moved the Swell trumpet out onto the great chest, and they put in a new trumpet. They replaced the oboe bassoon with different pipes. They replaced, as what was described to me as a useless aeoline 8-foot with a 4-foot principal. And then there was actually a Vox in a box, a Vox Humana, in the Swell chamber, which was replaced with the 1 1/3.
Okay, sweet.
And when you go in to see that, and at the time when I was here, from 91 to 2001, the original wood casing was still up in there in pieces.
Box, yeah.
But you'll see that up on the side of the chest, up above it, on an offset chest.
Okay.
That's where the Vox used to be.
So it's mostly still a 19th century Kilgen. It's just had some tonal things change. I can
Correct.
see where apparently it looks like a mechanical console or a tubular console would have been in there, and probably in the 20s they electrified it, and there was a lot of that going on around here.
I would
at the
imagine
time.
that would be my speculation as
Move
well.
the console out here so you could have some space for the singers.
Correct,
All
correct.
right, well, so then the reason you're here helping us out today is because you used to be the organist here, and you were here when this console went in. Is that correct?
Correct. That was my project.
Okay.
This is my legacy here. So the original Kilgen console was not built to AGO specs because the specifications came sometime after that. So the pedal board wasn't quite radiating correctly. It was dimensionally just different.
Yeah.
So one could get used to playing it, but then you go somewhere else to play on an AGO console and suddenly you're making mistakes, and visitors would always kind of have to struggle a little bit to get used to that as well. But the other reason why we did this was because, and when I say we, that was Robert Dial out of Springfield, Illinois. He built this console for us. The pedal only has 5 ranks native to it.
Okay.
4 of those are wood. The octave bass is metal. We could borrow some stops that, and I don't know why Kilgen didn't choose to do this, but there are 3 stops in the grate that have their own primaries. So the open diapason, 16-foot, the viol da gamba, and the reed, the trumpet, all are able to be shared down. So we moved some of those resources into the pedal to give it a little bit more definition.
So the 16-foot open wasn't already, Kilgen didn't choose to couple that.
Correct.
That's
correct.
interesting.
That was
But I
our
guess
move. So we'll talk about that when we go through the
you have the big
stops.
16-foot open, so maybe they're fine with that.
That's right. That's right. That
Okay.
could be. So the first stop on here on the grate is the open diapason. That's a lot of what's in the facade. The first 5 pipes are wooden and inside the case. The middle pipe here is low F. There are some dummy pipes, as Kilgen frequently used, just to kind of fill out a facade. Unlike Trinity, though, the facade here is made up of both the first and open second diapason. At Trinity, it was just the first open, as we saw. So a nice warm sound, typical Kilgen, I think. And that also plays at 8 foot. So both of those are a unit stop. And we move those into the pedal at 16, 8, and also the mixture is derived from that range.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that 16-foot open diapason is doing a lot of work.
It is.
Playing your second on the grate. All right, so let's compare that to the first open diapason then on the grate.
Sure. So when I was organist here, I actually had my registration set on the first open diapason, and I got complaints that the organ was a little too loud. So, and at the time, the congregation, about 100 people on a Sunday, it wasn't bad, but the church was full. It was necessary to use the first open, but the second open actually was easier on the ears, I think. But it's a very big sound. Contrast that to the second.
Yeah, it's more common Victorian sort of sound to have that big first and then
Right.
a more restrained second. So the choruses in here are all original to the Kilgen as it was in 24.
Correct, except for the reed.
Except for the reed. So and that was just a different reed.
Right.
So yeah, it's a fairly complete division here. So let's keep building up the principal chorus
Okay.
there.
I'll do it on the second open.
Yeah, let's use the second.
So here's with the octave. Then the 2 2/3 with that. Add the 2 foot. And finally the mixture.
It's a very progressive sound for 1924 from Kilgen, especially knowing where they kind of went later. So that's really great to have, and it fills this room really well. And again, just the second open diapason. I imagine with the first on, you would probably really get a big.
Yes, it definitely is.
Yeah, but it matches the brightness of that mixture in the 2 foot. So that's
Sure.
all right.
And then you have, of course, the great super coupler.
Oh. If you need even more.
Right on top of that, right.
All right, well, let's listen to some of the other sounds we have in this division. We have some flutes.
Right. So we have the 8-foot gross flute, which originally was called the Clarabella 8. Is a 30-year-old. What did I know about stop names? But we changed it to gross flute, and it's actually a really nice harmonic sound. I'm regretting that I didn't use that more when I was here.
Let me hear more the top end of it. I want to hear how it sounds. Yeah, very colorful, definitely big. Big Clarabella sound there, so I can see where that was coming from.
Definitely is.
Okay, and then
We had the gedeckt. And it's significant to mention that this pipework is all over 100 years old, so that's kind of cool too. Nice warm sound.
yeah, but big too. Nice full for the grate. Okay.
Okay, then we have the 8-foot viol de gamba, excuse me.
Yeah, cutting sound.
And as I mentioned, there's a lot of stop names that are similar between Trinity and Holy Cross, so surely those organists probably collaborated when they put their instruments in.
Sure, yeah. I mean,
Because Trinity's Kilgen was put in 1926, so.
Oh, okay, well, I think Kilgen had their standard stop names and
That's
stop styles.
Probably true too. Dulciana.
And then you said the Aeolian was in the Swell.
It was in the Swell,
So
right.
this was our soft choir accompaniment stop here on the grate, and then we had one on the Swell. But very
Right.
smooth, very soft Dulciana sound. But,
And unfortunately not under expression, but that's
Yeah.
just the way it is here.
and very similar to the Dulciana we heard at Third Baptist on a 1930 Kilgen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right, same sort of sounds. Okay, and then we have a 4-foot.
4-foot flute harmonique, which we'll put that with the gedeckt. I think it's a delightful flute.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, and then we have the trumpet, and then clarion's a unit with
That
it.
is.
So this was originally our swell trumpet.
Correct. And the clarion was the new 1998 edition.
Having a lovely winter day here, almost winter day. The gloomy weather outside has turned the reeds a little sour, so we'll leave those for now.
Okay.
And then full set of couplers. We do have a set of chimes in the grade.
There is.
Are those original from 24?
I don't believe so, because as you're going to see when you go into the swell chamber, the original pneumatic action's still in there.
Oh, okay.
The tubes are gone, but you'll see the hammers across the back wall. I'm not quite sure when those chimes were put in. It might have been in the 24. It could have been in the 1950. It's 2 octaves, which Bob Dial actually commented on. He said, "I've never seen such a wide range on the chimes." But
It's possible they're original, and somebody just didn't want to reload that action and moved them. And
that could be.
I've seen that in my own church, so it's possible. But we'll go in and take a look and see what we think.
Sure. Plus, they're right outside the swell box now, so
okay.
which is in that back wall there.
Okay.
So they might have wanted to move it out and get it behind that archway.
Well, let's talk about the swell then.
Okay.
Let's just start here. Tell me what stops we have in the swell.
So we start with the 16-foot Borden, which is independent.
Oh, and that's with the swell box open.
That is with the swell
Very
box
gentle.
open. And that's one of the things that I noted when I was organist here, is that the grate was so much more present than the swell, which is again behind that archway.
Yeah.
So it presented some challenges at times, but overall it's still a lovely swell division. That's the only stop that's borrowed to the pedal from the swell, unlike Trinity, which is the pedals mostly from the swell. We have an open diapason 8. The bottom 6 or 8, I forget what the number was, but are wooden. And St. Louis pipe organ, Alan Nagel said that they're likely saxophone pipes.
Oh.
So I'm not sure where they would have gotten those from, maybe from a theater organ that closed or something. But it's a nice warm sound too.
Yeah, very dark and gentle. Let's hear those bottom ones just to see what...
I forget where it transitions.
There's a little difference, but it just sounds like a gentle diapason, so they work.
They do work.
Okay.
They do work. The stop diapason, which I find to be a really nice.
And a solutional?
Definitely Kilgen string. And with the Celeste.
Yeah, it closes down nicely.
It does indeed.
Okay.
The 4-foot principal, that's the one that replaced the nearly useless Aeolene.
So this was added in the 80s? Or
87,
87,
correct,
okay.
1987, with the open diapason.
Interesting. I'd like to hear the principal by itself,
Sure.
just to see how... That's a much more restrained sound than I would have expected somebody who's trying to brighten up a 19th century sound
Right.
would have done in the 80s, but they've kept it within the sort of the boundaries of what the swell would have been. So that's impressive. I like
agree. I agree.
That. Okay.
Then we have a flute traverso, just like at Trinity. I'm going to play it by itself first. And what I found with, as I said at Trinity, that it makes a nice solo stop by itself. Almost sounds like the orchestral flute.
Yeah, definitely.
It's very, very nice.
Okay.
Then we have the 2-foot flautino.
And I imagine that goes well with the flutes or the principals, given how gentle the diapason and the principal are.
I agree. These these were great choir accompaniment stops.
Nothing's real overwhelming, but it's got a lot of color.
It does.
Okay.
It does indeed. Again, the Larigo 1 1/3, which replaced the Vox in a box. Again, it's off to the side up in the front. Makes kind of for a nice. Makes for a nice solo.
Again, added within the bounds of the instrument that was here instead of trying to make it into something else.
Exactly. You get the nearly mixture sound with that, with the 4-foot super on.
Okay, and then a few more stops in here.
We have a 3-rank cornet.
Okay.
It's the only cornet in the organ. Works both well with the flute and the principal.
And it is intended to be a solo cornet sound.
Correct.
To stand out. Okay, very good.
All right.
And then our reeds.
Then we have the fiery trumpet, which I really enjoyed playing. It's got a really fiery sound to it. Very fresh sounding.
It gives us some extra brightness in the swell there.
It definitely is. Compare that to the trumpet and the grate.
And the grate's louder but darker, and the swell's softer but brighter.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
Gives you some options. Very good.
Okay, then we have the oboe bassoon. Again, that was originally in the Kilgen, but the pipes were replaced with different pipes. Which I think makes for a nice color read, too. As I mentioned at Trinity, I frequently pull the oboe on just to give a little bit of a reed color to ensembles.
Yeah, it adds some nice color there. Okay.
And then finally, one of my favorite stops is the clarinet, which shares the bottom 12 with the oboe. I remember using that frequently as a color stop, too. Get a little out of tune. It's a little cool in here today.
It gives you something different than just your usual chorus. Very nice.
Exactly.
I'm curious to hear the whole swell by itself, with the Borden and the open diapason, principal, mixture.
Like everything?
Everything. Let's just go nuts.
Okay.
Not the Celeste.
Not the Celeste, yeah. With the super.
For being very gentle, it's got a lot of power then once you get it all together.
That's true. And frequently at big festival services, I would use the super coupler to the grate just to give it more brightness as
Okay.
well.
All right, well, tell me now, you said there's only a few independent pedal stops, but we have a lot of stops over here that are borrowed.
Correct.
Just, let's go through and tell me where things come from.
Okay, so as I mentioned, there's 5 stops, as you said. 4 are wood, and the other one's metal, the 4-foot being the metal one. So actually, I'll start with the resultant. That was a result of the 1998 edition. Using the subbass, or sub-bass, whatever you prefer on that. Just quinted in the bottom, just like before. But the big guy is the double open diapason. That was one that I rarely used unless I needed a big finish at the final stanza type thing. It's literally a balcony shaker. If you could feel this. You can hear. So it's got a lot of power to it. Big pipes over there in the corner. You can't miss them. Then, as I said, we brought the open diapason down at 16, 8, and the mixture is derived from that rank.
Okay.
Which I felt gave more definition. When we put an ensemble together, you'll hear the difference on that. It just gave a little bit more power and depth to the pedal.
Okay.
Clarity is what I'm using. Sub-bass was one of the original 5. The Lieblich-Gedeckt, which comes from the Borden on the swell, which made for a nice, if you had something soft. And of course, being under expression, you can even bring it down further. Mm-hmm. The principal bass is an extension of the 16-foot open.
Okay.
Now, these two are a curiosity because originally, so they're both stopped wooden ranks.
Okay.
One of them was called principal bass and the other one was called flauto bass. And I think we might have switched them. But the flauto bass is a little bit bigger sound. to me sounded fluty still.
Is that stopped or is that open?
I can't
It kind of sounds open to me. We'll have to go see.
We'll have to check that out. Yeah, for sure. But if that was the principal bass, I still felt it was too mellow to be a principal, and it makes for a nice flute counterpart to the sub bass. And the other one we renamed to, well, I think it was called Borden before. Got a little bit more upper harmonics that we can hear. The violoncello comes from the viol da gamba, as I mentioned. The octave bass is the only metal pipe in the pedal, full compass. I would have preferred that Trinity that I had an independent 4-foot rather than being an extension of the open eye pacing, because it's got a little bit more brightness. It solos a little bit nicer too.
Well, it's interesting because usually with Kilgen has like one metal rank in the pedal, it's going to be a string. So having the violoncello there from the grate makes perfect sense because that's something they would have done to add brightness. But I guess here, because it's bigger, they went to the octave bass, but I don't know why that's the only one and why there's not an 8-foot metal.
I couldn't say.
Huh.
I mean, especially since it could be borrowed
Maybe
down.
there was somebody here who just thought that's the way it should be.
Right. That's more than likely the case, I'm sure. And we can't ask them because they're gone. Yeah. So just to put a little bit of a, before we go up to the upper work here, 16/8 and 4. Just the sub bass, principal, and octave bass.
Nice clear sound. Okay.
It very much is. The 4-foot Borden is non-existent. To be quite frank, it's there because Bob Dial wanted an even number of stops. Although I was thinking about this as I was getting ready yesterday, I thought, you know, why on earth didn't I make this a 2-foot stop from the open die pacing? Because there's still room to go up. So, so Kevin or anybody who's watching this from Holy Cross, think about making it a 2-foot stop. The Roush bass is derived from that open die pace, and it's a wired mixture, but it still sounds pretty nice.
2 ranks, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Again, just to give a little bit of clarity. The original Kilgen console, the Trumpet 8, was the only thing that was brought down to the pedal. So as part of the 1998 project, we brought it down at 16/8 and 4. And when I was here, we didn't have the bottom 12 notes. So the bottom 12 were added sometime in the 2000s. We couldn't exactly remember when. And those pipes actually were put on the side of the case over there. Oh. Kind of stick out like a sore thumb, but they're very effective. So again, we have that big trumpet, which I asked for a 4-foot, again, so we have some solo ability and some add more to the pedal, and the pizzown. So that's from the trumpet, and then we add on those bottom 12. And I believe they got those from the now closed Our Redeemer Lutheran Church, which is just a few blocks up on Utah. Yeah. But they match nicely when you go from B to C.
Lovely. Well, this is 34 ranks, you said?
34 ranks.
It's an amazing amount of color, again, for the period and for what alterations have been made. They fit really well with the style of the instrument, so I'm impressed and glad this instrument is still here playing.
Yes.
Kevin Huxhold is the actual organist here, and he's going to come in and do a little playing for us. But for now, Jeff and I are going to play around with this organ a little bit, and I'm going to crawl around and we'll look inside and we'll see what we can find here.
Kevin Huxhold. I've been organist here at Holy Cross for just over 10 years now. Well, one thing that's interesting is that I actually studied for grad school here. So I was studied here with Pat Partridge, and one of the things we found pretty quick is that it's greater than the sum of its parts. So I don't know how they did it, but like for example, we were looking for the one stop that's like your big French reed that you need isn't here, but there are like 4 or 5 others you can put together to get the same effect. But if you do these 6, basically everything with a lot of upper partials, get nice bright sound, and then close the box, you get so opening, second movement of Vidor 5, but down a third to avoid tuning issues. It's that time of year. Yep. So the great division is in the room with us, right in front of me, basically. But the swell is in the box, is a separate room directly underneath the bell tower, north-facing wall, maybe not the most climate controlled. So as soon as we get the weather shift, which is right around now, it just goes in a hurry. This used to be the church for Concordia Seminary, used to be right across the street here. So you'd have services of 500 pretty consistently, and it can support that still even now. So with fewer people than that, there's a lot of versatility there. Just using parts of it, you can use different parts every week, get some contrast that way.
So we start climbing into this organ here on the left side, and the first thing we see is the 16-foot Pisana that was added, just the bottom octave. And then coming in this side, we start with the pedal division, which is all here on our left, mostly the pedal open. The other 8-foot open stop is up above us as well. You see the 16 back there. It is open pipes. We're checking to make sure. Going under, we can see that the regulator looks like it might have been replaced or updated. Looks like a different construction. Could have been done in the 50s. And then over here we have the stopped pedal pipes as well as the open metal pipes. We can see there have been some new ones added at the top to extend it up for the pedal. Then to get up to the grate, we have to go back, and there is a ladder that takes us up to that wallboard. So we're up here and looking down at the pedal opens. You can see all of them here, and one rank of stopped ones here right next to the chest. And then here we are at the grate. You see the trumpet right at the front. That used to be in the swell. The second open behind it. And then the viol da gamba, the mixture, our 2-foot, 2 2/3, our flute harmonique, and then the 4-foot octave behind that, our 8-foot gedeckt, and the dulciana, the clarabella is back there, now called grossflute, and the first is all the way in the back, and here we find the chimes, which are on a new action, definitely. But those are Deegan Class A chimes. They could be old. It could be original to the 1920s. They're in front of the opening to the swell. Now, turning around and looking at the facade, we see evidence of the original colors of the facade. Lots of writing back here indicating which pipe is which pipes are dummies. But something that I've not ever really come across before is a whole lot of scratching on the pipes from technicians who cleaned this organ at various points in its history. Only one name I think I recognize there. Going around to the other side, we can look down on the other pedal chest, the stopped pipes, and the open metal there. Now to go to the swell, we have to go back outside, and we actually go back here to the tower. We unlock this door, and we start by going off to the right where we find the blower, which is back here. The stairs to the heights of the tower are back here as well. And we find what I believe is the original electric motor. The power supplies back here have definitely been upgraded. But that's the original Century motor. Back through, and then we find the door to the swell division. Swell is a little more crowded. There's not a ton we can see from the floor, so we'll get up onto the chest so we can look down at the pipework. And we start with the clarinet in the front, followed by the oboe, the new trumpet. We have our cornet, our 2-foot flautino, and then the open diapason's right behind that. And it does have wooden bottom 8 notes. Not really sure the reasoning for that, but there it is. Our strings continue. We have the 8-foot gedeckt, and then the celeste is one of those two. Yeah, wooden pipes. There in the back we have the 4-foot flute, all of our 16-foot Borden, and indeed the original chime action, which I think has more notes than we have chimes on the current action. Some more graffiti etched back here. And look down at those back rows of pipes. And the opening of the swell out into the grate. Now here is one of those diapasons. I felt like pulling one out, and it's really hard to see in the lighting, but the mouth is unique. If you can tell, there's a metal beard in front, and then a very narrow windway and a wooden beard inside the pipe. Kind of hard to see, but that's what that lighter color wood is a dowel in there. And then back there we see the original Vox Humana chest, which now has the larigo. You can tell these are new pipes. And this chest is still connected on its original action, which is tubed off of the main chest. And we can see those tubes here at the front. And it still works, although the stop name has been misspelled on the chest. It's not the only one in the organ.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for introducing me to the Kilgen here at Holy Cross Lutheran. I've known about this organ. I remember when the work was happening, but I've never really gotten to come in and see it. So this is just a fantastic thing, a little piece of history here in South St. Louis, and I'm so glad you know it so well and can show it off. So thank you for coming in today on a rainy Wednesday morning.
You're welcome.
My thanks to the staff here at Holy Cross for letting us come in, and to Kevin Huxhold for joining us and letting us come in and see this instrument. And my thanks to all the sponsors of the Organ Media Foundation to make it possible for these videos to happen. If you would like to become a sponsor, you can do that by going to organ.media and just clicking on support. It's a nice, easy way to help make sure we can keep making more of these videos. And until those videos are out, remember you can find streaming classical organ music on our 3 stations, organlive.com, Positively Baroque, and the Organ Experience. Thank you again, Jeff. This has been fantastic to see. I'm Brent Johnson. Until next time, thanks for watching.